verbissenen Shin. Okay, so hi, welcome back to Matt Jerkhold's rambly reading updates, the monthly vlogs that haven't been monthly now, because as you probably haven't noticed, there was no July update. We skipped that one because, ironically, I had a lot of free time, but I decided to spend it otherwise. July was like actual, genuine summer vacation for me. And I just ended up using that free time for something else. I barely read anything at all. So I didn't end up actually finishing any book in that month. I spent most of my free time with other media, but reading fell to the wayside for a bit. I had a break. I'm sure that's also partially because my daily commute to trade school or my internship place that's going on right now, that daily commute, sitting in the train for like 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes there and back again, that's my daily routine for reading. Anything that any reading I do otherwise is just extra, but that's my basis for reading. So obviously when summer vacation hit and I didn't have that daily commute anymore, there also was a break in the routine. So not really that surprising, and my interests for those weeks was kinda elsewhere. I do have some stuff to talk about in this one, including this book that I did actually mostly read at the back end of July, but then only finished it in the first few days of August. But yeah, most of that was read in July, and that was probably like the only stuff that I really read in July. And that's the book that we're gonna start with here. A book that I have mentioned in previous videos. Elliot Page's autobiography, Pageboy. Like I said in previous videos already, Elliot Page's Pageboy was one of my most anticipated books this year, and I had been waiting for it since it was announced last year. I was really interested to read his story, his side of things, and his like personal insight in all of this. Not only is it generally interesting to hear trans stories and their individual experiences with the transition, both like in the eye of the public as well as the private parts of it. It's always interesting when trans people want to share that. And there's an additional layer with someone like Elliot Page, who is an actor with an already extensive like filmography behind him, with which I also I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with his work, and as a movie fan, as someone who is into the industry, the artwork and whatever, there's an extra interest for me in that. And also, this is the first time that I really I don't know, I can't really think of, I mean, Elliot Page isn't gonna be the first actor that went through a gender transition. I don't think so. I mean, obviously there are trans actors as well, obviously, but I can't really think of another actor, or at least there's no one that's this prominent in my mind, who has already had a sizable career behind them, portraying, for the most part, partially very typically female characters, and now with the transition to a more masculine appearance as well, that changes the entire career path of that person. And I'm just really fascinated, even besides the personal things that a transition comes with, I'm also fascinated with how that would impact an artist's career, especially someone who is a recognizable name in a big industry, Hollywood. And so there was multiple layers why I was so interested in this biography. And this autobiography it was interesting. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't think like it. I've seen other people criticize it for not going like that in depth into like self-reflecting analysis mode or whatever. And I guess they didn't find that in here. I mean, fair enough. This isn't like a self-psychology autopsy or whatever. Elliot Page is just telling parts of his life, most of which relate to his identity and his changing identity, the way he found himself and the way he repressed and then eventually started to express his actual self. I guess you could argue that it doesn't go deep enough or whatever, but I found it interesting enough for me to be engaged. I enjoyed being shared this insight of someone's life, and there's some very interesting things in here, I think. The book doesn't go in like chronological way. It jumps around a lot in Elliot's life. There's childhood stuff, there's adolescent stuff, there's adult stuff, there's current stuff, and it's like all over the place. That's fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I think from the outside looking in, like obviously the whole transition could have been quite a big surprise, but reading this autobiography, like it's super clear that this wasn't a thing that just came out of nowhere for Elliot Page, but that this was genuinely something that drew itself through his entire life from childhood on. This the gender dysphoria, the struggle with the own like appearance and the perception of other people of him. Like it really makes sense that he eventually took the step to publicly readjust himself to his like genuine personality, which I'm glad he did. I'm super fucking happy for Elliot. I would crack open a cold one with him anytime. He's one of the boys now. He's always been one of the boys. But like, this is it though. This is it. Elliot Page had a ton of stereotypically girly roles in his career. So it was surprising to me, because obviously there's a lot of like stories of movie productions in here as well. It was surprising to me what kind of movies were actually empowering for Elliot Page. Like, for example, Juno, one of his most famous movies, where he plays a pregnant teen girl, like something, I guess, in a heteronormative sense, a very, very female thing, was something that was actually meaningful to him in terms of like gender dysphoria and gender identity. And I guess that kind of makes sense. And also there's another movie, what is it called? Whip It, where he plays a girl that gets into like this roller derby in this pretty brutal sport, which also Elliot talks about with bright colors, because this was an opportunity for him in between all of these girly roles to like learn a high octane sport and do something less stereotypical. And There's also in the movie a lot of themes about like there's a parent-daughter struggle, a conflict about being like pushed heteronormative female values onto the daughter and shit, and there's this conflict, which also makes a lot of sense considering real life personal private struggle, because you know, he was seen as and portrayed as this girl for most of his roles, and like also in the public eye. This is the shit that I mean. This is super interesting. An artist's experience with this adds this layer, because this person is already familiar with playing roles, acting roles, which is probably a not healthy but kind of natural extension of their real life acting, where they are like Elliot had to keep up the expectations that were put on him through work and private life, even though he didn't feel like the girl or woman that he was seen as, and then through work also portrayed as. He says it himself in the book at some point, I think, like something along the lines that like, why should I pretend that I'm somebody that I'm not in real life, and I'm already pretending I'm someone else in the movies. Imagine having to act all the time your entire life. So yeah, if you are into dramatic emotional life struggles while taking nasty shits and are interested in a transition story, plus the movie industry background, behind the scenes shit, I think Pageboy is a very, very interesting read that I recommend wholeheartedly. If like anything of those three things, I guess matches your interests, I totally like recommend it. Glad I read that. That was good. I really enjoyed it. And I'm genuinely so looking forward to whatever Elliot Page is doing next. Around the 60s, there's gonna be a little bit of a history lesson before I talk about this book. Around the 60s, in the US, there was a children's mystery crime novel series called The Three Investigators, where three boys were like solving mysteries, you know, so that sort of deal. In the 60s, put out in the US, had a bunch of, I think like something between 10 and 20 books, but it never really took off. A couple decades later though, around the 90s, it became a massive cult hit in Germany. I don't know why, but it hit hard in Germany. It was hugely successful here. And it still is. In 2023, there are still more episodes put out. Audio plays, there are more original books, there are even the occasional live stage performance of said audio plays, because it's such a popular thing. Hell, at this point there are more original German books in the series than there ever were like English ones of the original like series or whatever. Like Germany took that franchise and made it its own. And many people my age grew up with this, including me. I was obsessed with this children's mystery thing when I was growing up. I had a ton of audio plays. I read a bunch of the books. Over here it's not called The Three Investigators though. It's called Die drei Fragezeichen, which translates to the three question marks. That was the branding over here. And I got curious to revisit some of that, and I decided to read one of those books. My bootleg ebook copy doesn't have a cover. This is Die drei Fragezeichen und der Karpatenhund by M.V. Carey. Original title: The Three Investigators and the Mystery of the Invisible Dog. Okay, so The Three Investigators and the Mystery of the Invisible Dog, which over here is called Die drei Fragezeichen und der Karpatenhund, which translates to The Three Question Marks and the Carpathian Dog, I believe. This is one of the stories, and this is from this was part of the original US run of stories, so this is actually one of the OG stories. I had this as a kid as an audio play tape, and I adored it. This was one of my favorite episodes, but this is the first time I read the book, and obviously the audio plays are like sort of abridged versions of the book, so there was a bit of stuff here, some details, not a lot, but some that I didn't know from the autoplay that were only in the book. I did read the German translation though for nostalgia. I didn't read the English original. The thing that I liked about this as a kid already, I think, because as a kid I remember the audio play being incredibly atmospheric, and that is partially, or like a lot, I guess, because the setting of this story is pretty contained. 95% of the story is all set in around like this one apartment complex. And there's a lot of like spooky nightly surveillance of like the apartment complex at night, and a lot of like quiet moments, and it's all about getting to know the individual like neighbors around this place and learning about their relationships to each other. It's all very contained, and I really liked that. That made for a lot of good atmosphere. I still like that now. And the story itself is simply about the three investigators being hired by this dude who mainly got a piece of art stolen from him, a crystal figure, which is the invisible dog because it represents a dog. This crystal figure was stolen from him with a ransom note. But there's also a bunch of other like weird shit going on, even some of it alluding to like paranormal shit, like paranormal occurrences. And obviously the three investigators don't want to believe in anything paranormal. This is gonna be investigated, and there's gonna be a reasonable explanation found for this. So that's the thing. Find the thief, find the crystal dog statue, and see why the fuck there's so much weird shit around it. Yeah, it's still fun. Like, obviously as a kid's book, or like maybe even young adult book, the language is very simple. It's not like super complex, but it is, and it's also not long, but it is engaging enough. It is fairly atmospheric. I still like the characters. In fact, the pool of characters with all the neighbors running around this apartment complex has variety and is pretty interesting. And I think what makes this so strong is that the explanations for the stuff that's happening for this mystery isn't like super far-fetched or whatever, and there are enough genuine clues around that you could figure it out yourself without being like completely spoon-fed the information, you know? You can turn on your little child brain and figure things out yourself before the characters actually mention it, which is always a strong thing with like these mystery books. And I genuinely still love one or two like of the twists and clever ideas in here. Like I guess nobody would really care about spoilers here, but there are like I'm not trying to spoil anything, but there are some clever things, like around where the crystal dog statue is hidden the whole time, and makes for a really neat surprise that you could figure out, though, if you were a clever little kid, could really figure out early on too. And that's not to the detriment of the mystery, because it's still very clever. And yeah, no, this was a fun nostalgic look back, and I still enjoyed this. This was a fun, enjoyable, quick read. And hell, I would still completely recommend these Free Investigators books for like children or like teenagers, as like that sort of deal. Like, these are still good, or at least a lot of them are good. I don't know if they are all good, but it's still a solid series, which I'm probably gonna be reading. Like, I'm gonna be revisiting this series from time to time anyway. Like, this is not gonna be the only one that I'm gonna be revisiting for the rest of my life. But yeah, that was that. And then we get into some summer reading, something that I had actually planned to read this summer because it thematically kind of fits, I thought. And like, making plans is the easy thing. Actually pulling through, however, different. But I did actually sit down and read this. This as well was a revisiting of something that I read when I was much younger. I'm not huge on this cover art, but this is Meg by Steve Alten. Now, you might have heard of Meg because it has been made into a movie in like 2018 or 19, and there's currently a sequel coming out like right now. It might have already come out a couple weeks ago, I don't even know, but it's like in cinemas now, as far as I know. This is the book, and I have read this book, this prehistoric shark action novel. I had read this once before, like 15 years ago, when I was a teenager doing a student internship at a local library. I remember that I randomly, like while doing work, that I randomly saw that book in the shelf at the library one day, and that was then my go-to read during the breaks during that internship. So I have some fond memories of it, and I know I enjoyed it back then, though it's not like the kind of book that would really stay in your memory. It's not like that super memorable when it comes to its content, but I remember enjoying it back then, and I was curious to revisit it, especially now that there's like, for some reason, 2 movies. I don't know why that happened. And the first one wasn't even that good. But yeah, I thought like also this would be nicely summerly reading, like a shark ocean story with lots of beaches and whatever. I come on, that's summer reading. That's my summer book. And so I read this again. I actually started reading like the original version from 1997. But then after like a fourth through the book, I switched to a modern printing of it. I switched to a modern printing because I found out that Steve Alten, the author, did a huge revision of this book around 2005, where he improved and extended the text quite a lot, and this post 2005 revised version must have been the one that I read as a teenager too. So I switched to the modern version and read that from there on out, and yeah, it was definitely better. The prose was definitely improved over the old print for sure. The content of the story hasn't really changed much, except for like maybe like flourishes and like flavor details, but like the actual plot is the same. But it is written much better than the old book was for sure. So that was a revision that I support, I guess, whatever. This book is a story about a prehistoric shark, a megalodon, roaming the oceans and eating people, while a bunch of other people try to capture it or kill it to stop the madness. So yeah, it's a very basic creature feature monster story that you could see in like a sci-fi B movie or whatever, and it very much delivers on that. You already know what to expect from a story like that, and that's pretty much exactly what it does. It is lightweight entertainment, and it does that fairly well. I mean, the shark action is fun. There's inventive moments with that, and some of it even surprisingly gruesome. Really like almost horror movie vibe. But there's also obviously a bunch of character shit, and that's like not its strong point, even though there's a lot of focus on that. There's romantic quarrels between characters. There's like this whole redemption arc of the like main character who got a lot of shit from his backstory and is like a disgraced ex-diver who has to prove himself again. Now that people believe that the megalodon is actually real, he has to be the savior and redeem himself and whatnot, like that sort of trope. Like it serves its purpose. None of the characters are like super interesting or sympathetic. They serve their purpose though. They drive the plot forward. It's fine. I don't really have many complaints. And honestly, like there's so much corny writing in this. Again, like a creature feature B movie, there's so much corny writing that a lot of it is actually like enjoyably dumb or like enjoyably like corny. Like the flaws, if you want to call it that, aren't even like to its detriment because it fits with this pulpy action story. It's also very much like a boomer story. It feels like sometimes the author is of a certain generation, I think, and he has a bunch of quirks. None of them like truly like toxic or offensive or like grating, but it's like just funny sometimes the way he writes characters. But he also always usually makes up for it with like other things, and all of this like just adds to this like really this pulpy B movie vibe, and that's what makes it so entertaining. And also like it's just cool for me personally to see so much underwater stuff. Like this book, the Mariana Trench, like the deepest hole in the earth, this infamous underwater abyss that we never like truly explored, is a central theme and location in this book, and there's like lengthy scenes exploring this Mariana Trench and shit with all the deep sea shit. I mean, that's where the titular megalodon comes from, and I love that shit. That is cool stuff. I could read about that all day, you know? I really enjoy a fictional story that takes all of that stuff into account. And I'm convinced that Steve Alten has a genuine personal passion for like a lot of aquatic things. Like the diving, the submarine stuff, like the boats and the surfing. There's a lot of surfing in this too. And I'm convinced that the author actually has passion, like personal passion that he puts into describing these things fairly accurately. So there's a good vibe in that regard. And obviously, since this is like a science fiction horror thing about a prehistoric shark with lots of like super high-tech submarines and stuff. There's some corny pseudoscience, but again, it only makes the package more complete because it fits so much into this. And even when some of these things are not like believable at all, or like too hamstrung or whatever, they still make for good setups for entertaining action. And so it works out. Like, this book is not a masterpiece at all. It's not even necessarily something I would call great or recommend to everybody. But if you're into like pulpy, corny creature feature action reads and light reads with pretty quick pacing as well, this is completely solid. And it hits that mark pretty well with all of its flaws, which for the most part, honestly, also kinda heighten the enjoyment because it's just like funny. I don't know, it's just entertaining. And it actually, in hindsight, completely makes sense that this got a movie adaptation because it is such a pulpy creature feature action thing. This could have completely worked as a movie, though. I mean, that's a discussion for another day, but the movie really didn't work out. It changed a lot for the movie anyway, a lot of which I don't think were an improvement at all. I rewatched the movie after reading the book, and I wrote a review on Letterboxd if you care to read that as well. I'm not gonna like regurgitate that here as well, but like the book is better as is most times, even when it's just a stupid shark monster story. The book is better. But yeah, that's Steve Alten's Meg. I'm glad I revisited this. That was fun, just fun, lightweight shit. And honestly, after some of the heavy stuff that I read back in June, this lightweight nonsense was actually kind of what I needed. So yeah, I have no complaints in that regard. I have more complaints with the next one. I'm losing my voice because I haven't been doing these vlogs in so long. I have more complaints with the next one, which I'm gonna put that right here next to this because this also relates to the Meg series. Did you know that Steve Alten's Meg franchise about the prehistoric shark has like 7 books and still ongoing? There's like coming, like there is a sequel coming out this year. Like, this series about the fucking monster shark is not going down. It's fucking crazy. I don't know. Like, I know there are like other creatures that appear in these books eventually, but I still don't really know how Steve Alten continues this. Like, how, what, with what? How do you fill 7 books with this? I don't know. But after reading the original Meg again, I was curious to read something of the sequels, and I didn't read a like direct sequel, but I found this novella, this short little novella that's like a sort of prequel sequel. It was released just a couple years ago, but it is chronologically set between the first original book and the second book, and this is called Meg, Angel of Death 1.1 Survival by Steve Alten. A novella to bridge the gap between 1 and 2, which came out decades after those 2 older books were originally written. My god. This is, yeah, again, it's a novella. It's very short, and it picks up immediately at the end of the original book, which is neat. And this isn't Nah, this isn't a spoiler. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. In the first mag, there's this like giant aquarium / research station that they were trying to capture the megalodon in, to have it like as a tourist attraction and to be able to like research it. And at the end of the book, they capture one of Meg's baby pups, like a baby megalodon, which they put into that research station / aquarium thing. And this novella here, bridging the gap between Mag 1 and Mag 2, is about this aquarium / research station, how they finished it up, how they took care of this baby megalodon, which is called Angel. That's why it's in the title. And honestly, very interesting setup. Like, I was genuinely interested in like the organizational parts of how you like how do you organize this megalodon aquarium and what they do with that. Like, even aside from like monster action and shit, it was just interesting to see that part of it. I mean, there's a little bit of a Jurassic Park thing, I guess, but an aquatic sense. Also, like, just this baby megalodon, which couldn't be that big of a threat as the giant adult megalodon. So I was interested in how they, like, what would he do with that in terms of like action, suspense. I don't know how this was released or why this was released. I was googling around and I think I saw some notes that this was supposed to be part 1 of a trilogy. So there would have been 3 novellas to complete this story. But from what I've gathered, there never was part 2 or 3. And it doesn't even look like that's even still a thing, that's even still something that's planned. Right now, as it stands, this novella is on its own. And it's like, it is really not much to talk home about, really. It doesn't do much. It's really just like a throwaway little extra tidbit, I guess. Like, the story in it is not that interesting. The action is not like very engaging or inventive. There's new characters in here that are potentially interesting, but they are introduced in ways that really like deflate the potential. There's like one moment where a new character is introduced, and it's done in the way of like just a full page of listing of the biography of that person, and it's like, it feels like telling instead of showing. You know, you're supposed to show, not tell in stories, but this was just like, it felt like just listing off all the facts of this character and then he's there, instead of like making an actual organic, like interesting introduction. It felt like reading through the notes from the author about the character and not like the actual text. I don't know. And yeah, there's just not much to bite on in this one. The first book was already full of corny shit, and there was romantic quarrels, so there was also corny romantic shit. But in this one, now that the main character and the romantic interest from the first book are actually together, I don't need Steve Alten to write sex scenes, man. I really don't. But he does it. And it's not good. It's not an addition to the Meg franchise that was needed, especially since, and I already said that the first Meg was written in a way that really felt like the author was of a certain generation. And I didn't mention this before, but in Meg 1, the main character and the romantic interest, there's like at least a 10-year gap between the two, as was the style at the time, I guess. Like, it's not great, but it's there. In this novella that came out like 20 years later, it's actually acknowledged. To be fair, there is like a paragraph where the main character is finally like, okay, damn, what am I doing? Like, at least it's sort of acknowledged, but also still like, it's still what it is. And it doesn't help that Steve Alten isn't like, he doesn't need to write erotic encounters. He really doesn't need to. But yeah, that's the Meg Angel of Death spin-off novella thingy. It wasn't great. That's it for now. So, I don't know. See you later.